Alright guys, I'm getting all jacked up on coffee so I can get through this video for you. But what I'm going to talk about today is emergency food rations. And I ran a comparison across most of the major brands of emergency food rations out there. And I actually discovered a couple of pretty interesting things about them, and a couple of surprises came out of this that I think you guys are going to be really interested to hear about. So, first of all, the emergency food rations, to me, represent an opportunity to store high-calorie, compact food in a small space with a long shelf life. That's basically the purpose of emergency food rations. So, in order to compare these, I had to come up with a basis for comparison. So what I first asked myself is, what are the important attributes to me about emergency food rations? The first thing I wanted to look at was just calories to weight ratio. The second thing is bulk, so how many calories versus how much space that they take up. The third thing that I wanted to look at is shelf life. How long do they last on the shelf? And then the fourth thing that I wanted to look at was protein content. Most emergency rations have a high sugar and often a high fat content, but they tend to run a little lean on protein. And then finally, I decided to throw taste in there. Now, taste is not important when it comes to emergency rations. Emergency rations are for sustaining life, for providing enough calories to get you through another day. But if I found two rations that were comparable in all the other areas, I figured taste would be the deciding factor on which one I would choose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these individual rations, show you the analysis that I came up with on each one, and then I'm going to show you guys the conclusions that I came to and a couple of pretty interesting, surprising twists that came out of this. So the Maida Bar, this is a 400 calorie bar here, so 3 of these would give you a 1200 calorie amount. So 1200 calories, or 3 bars of this, would weigh 10.2 ounces. 1200 calories of this bar would contain 21 grams of protein. And the shelf life on these is about 5 years. This is definitely a lot denser and less flavorful. Next, we've got the Mainstay bar. So 1200 calories of this weighs 8.2 ounces, and the protein content is quite a bit lower. 1200 calories of this would only contain 9 grams of protein. And the shelf life of this is also about 5 years. Let's see how this one is. It's not terrible. It tastes basically like a really stale sugar cookie. A little bit of lemony taste to it, which is kind of nice. Let me cleanse my palate with some coffee. Next, we'll talk about the tack bar. This is actually one of my personal favorites. A lot of it just has to do with the packaging. It's packaged in these 2500 calorie blocks. It comes in these plastic kind of ammo can style things. It comes with 5 blocks in there, which they say is a 5-day food supply at 2500 calories a day. It also comes with water purification tablets and a survival kit in there. So it's just a pretty cool package altogether. But as far as the experiment, when I look at 1200 calories of the tack bar, 1200 calories weighs 9.1 ounces and contains 27 grams of protein. And this also has about a 5-year shelf life. This actually tastes really good. In fact, it's so delicious, I'm going to have another bite of it. Next, we'll look at the old standby, the Datrex bar. A 1200 calorie portion weighs 8.45 ounces and contains 9 grams of protein. So another example of one that has a relatively low protein content. The shelf life in this is also 5 years. Each bar is packaged by itself, so these have a plastic wrap around them. The flavor, the Datrex actually has a little bit less flavor. Next, we'll look at the SOS ration. 1,230 calories, weighs 8.5 ounces, and contains 24 grams of protein. This also has a 5-year shelf life, or roughly 5-year shelf life. So right away we see another thing I like about this is, like the Daytrex ration, each portion, each meal portion is individually packaged. This is a nice feature. Again, good flavor. This is a cinnamon flavor. Actually, this one's a contender. That one's not bad. Next, we'll look at the Grizzly ration. This is a 3,600 calorie pack as well, but when we look at a 1,200 calorie portion of this, 1,200 calories, weighs 8 ounces. This is, I think, actually one of the lighter calorie to weight ratios. But again, another low protein one, 9 grams of protein for 1,200 calories. And then this also has that same standby 5-year shelf life. Really similar consistency and everything to the mainstay, but they're not terrible. They're definitely not terrible. Next, we've got the Millennium Bar. This is a 400 calorie bar here, and I use these just because I really enjoy the taste of them. They come in quite a few different flavors, so I can mix them up a little bit, and it just seems to be a good handy little size to stick in all of my stuff. 1,200 calories of this actually weighs 9.4 ounces, which is a little heavier than several of the other ones. And the Millennium Bar runs about a 5-year shelf life too. That's good. That tastes like fresh cherries right off of the cherry tree. Well, maybe not exactly, but it is pretty tasty. The Millennium Bars are good. So now we've got the survival tabs. Now these guys take a little bit different approach. So here's where we deviate from the experiment or the comparisons a little bit. So these guys say 12 of these tablets represents a day's worth of all the food nutrients you need. They're saying that 12 of these tabs is 240 calories. So that's a pretty low calorie count, but that's what they say is enough to get you through a day. So 240 calories of these would weigh 1.7 ounces. It would weigh 1.7 ounces and contain 4 grams of protein. So pretty low on protein, pretty low on calories, but extremely lightweight. The other thing that really stands out about this is this has a 25-year shelf life. They're not horrible, but they definitely are not wonderful. Tastes a little bit like chewing on a really mild multivitamin. So that's a breakdown on them each individually. So here's where we come to our first interesting piece of information. So the Grizzly, the Mainstay, and the Daytrex are virtually identical. So the only thing that it's going to come down to between these three for me is taste. All right, so where does this put us with them? Well, I'm going to put the Mainstay, the Grizzly, and the Daytrex at the bottom of the pack. Those are the lowest protein content ones. They also are the least flavorful options. And then I'm also going to put the Maida down at the bottom, just simply because it starts to have a little higher protein content at 21 grams, but the taste is still really terrible and the weight's starting to get a little higher. So on the good side, what I have is I have the TAC bar, the SOS ration, and the Millennium Bar. And in my mind, all three of those represent high protein, high fat, good taste, and still a decent calorie to weight ratio. So now I'm really going to throw you guys for a loop. And now let's talk about the Mountain House and how it fits into this whole picture. So 1,300 calories of the Mountain House meals weighs 11.6 ounces, and you're getting arguably an actual meal, an actual food. So this is really interesting to me that these actually fit right in with the emergency food rations. Now here's the other thing about Mountain Houses. Mountain House now has a 30-year shelf life guarantee, or a 30-year freshness guarantee on their foods. So Mountain House meals actually have the longest shelf life out of any of the emergency food rations that I've tested. I have a good portion of my 30-day backup food supply, or 30 to 40-day backup food supply at my home, is in Mountain House meals. So here's the deal. Mountain House meals actually, for a calorie to weight ratio, are still in the same ballpark with all of these emergency foods that we're talking about here. Where they start to have a disadvantage is in the bulk of them. So obviously, 2 Mountain House meals here is the same as half of a package of tack bars. So clearly when it comes to the bulk of them, Mountain House meals aren't necessarily fantastic. So my conclusion after the video is I'm going to continue to store Mountain House meals for long-term emergency food storage. Out of all of the dedicated emergency food rations, the tack bar for me is the one that stands out, that I like the best. This will be the one that I'll continue to use. And I will continue to supplement some of my packs with the Millennium Bars just because of the convenience and the individual packaging of them. So I hope you guys found that interesting and learned a little bit about emergency food rations, and I'll catch you on the next one.